All right, we are up in Phoenix, in Scottsdale, with this guy, no introductions needed, and Kristan Cole, the one and only.
It's good to be here.
This is pretty exciting.
It's pretty neat.
It's pretty awesome. So what are we doing up here?
We're actually doing a summit for the team, and Kristan's actually running half the summit on the first day, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yep. Just got done doing a mastermind.
Yes, we did.
With some of the awesome agents here.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
So who is Kristan Cole?
I've got a couple pages of this. So every time we've come and talked to you, we find out something new. Last time was that apparently you and our good friend Anthony Azar own part of a restaurant. Found out today you're a pilot.
Yes.
It just keeps unfolding. We love this list of essentially your life story. The thing that we love the most about it is how much has happened in the last one page.
Right. Yeah, I think what's interesting is when you look at that, and people ask, well, why, what has happened in your life that all of a sudden you've had this growth in the last 5 years? And I said, well, you've got to look at the first 30 years.
Yeah.
And the first 30 years went a lot slower until about 2000, so first 16 years. And that was because I was in Alaska and I didn't have a lot of mentors mentoring me. And you can only grow so much when, you're the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage people all the time, they've got to get around people that are a lot smarter than they are, that will challenge them, that think differently. And even though a lot of the early people that I hung around, I didn't really hang around them.
Yeah.
I really never met them. But I was reading their books, I was listening to podcasts, and back then, it was tapes, cassette tapes.
So how big was Wasilla, Alaska?
Well, when we moved there in 1970, there was a gas station and a tiny, tiny little mom and pop grocery store. That's it.
And I'm going to butcher the story. You, when you were a teenager, rode your horse.
When I was 10.
When you were 10, rode your horse and were selling?
Right. I went door to door selling greeting cards to make money for school clothes.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
In Alaska.
I didn't even think it was weird at the time, but I look back on it and I'm like, that's pretty odd. But, I did. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. So looking at, when you were talking about mentors, your correct me if I'm wrong, two of the most influential people in your life is Gary Keller and John Maxwell.
True.
How, is it still surreal sometimes?
Sometimes.
I come from the pastor world where, I saw John Maxwell when I was younger, and he was still, talking in churches and stuff on a smaller scale, and just looking at him now, it's
right.
He's of leadership. So talking about tapes, my very first leadership lesson when I was 16, interning as a church, I had to watch The Irrefutable Laws of Leadership on VHS, and it was one tape per law.
Wow. Yeah, that's a while back. So I think you beat me, because I was actually getting, I think when I signed up for his Maximum Impact Club, I think they had just converted to CDs. So. Okay.
So John Maxwell has been an influence in your life before you even knew him on a personal level.
Oh, I never joined the Maximum Impact Club thinking that we would ever even meet. I just joined because I knew that I could listen in the car, and he also had those little pamphlets that came with it, so you could write your notes, and I just thought, I don't have an excuse for not becoming a good leader, because there are a lot of ways that you can have people influence you even if you never meet them. And so I just made a decision that I wasn't going to waste time in the car on nothingness, things that weren't going to grow me as a person or grow my leadership. And so I just made a decision that when I was in the car, I kind of made a deal with myself. And anytime I was in the car, which was a lot, in the early days because I was going on appointments, that before 5 o'clock, I had to always have something in the car I was listening to that was going to grow my leadership, grow me as a parent, something. And if I'd done good that day, then at 5 o'clock or whenever time I went home, I could listen to anything I wanted to.
That was your
So that was my deal with myself.
Yes,
yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
That's
and whether
cool.
it's Joel Osteen or, Andy Stanley, there's just a lot of great leaders that now have podcasts.
Yep.
So
That's awesome.
Listen to all of them.
That's really cool.
So how long have you been in real estate then? I mean, since
This will be my 35th year.
Wow.
So May of this coming year will be my 35th year.
Started in Alaska,
Started in Alaska.
and then you're really, like, as we look at everything, like, you're one of the founding people of expansion. Mm-hmm. And so
Which means I spent a lot of money when I didn't need to.
right? And we
Learning.
learned.
we've learned from
Yes,
that.
thank you for
Yes,
spending that
yes.
money. So what was that first location outside of Alaska was Phoenix or Scottsdale?
Yes.
How, like, what was going through your head? Was it fear? Was it excitement? Both?
At the time, I think because I was, basically doing it with Gary Keller, I don't know that there was so much fear in my mind. I knew it would work if I just didn't quit.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of how I looked at it. And the initial expansion into Anchorage had gone so well, I was duped into believing that it was always going to be that easy, and it's not.
Which is what your husband, we say this once a week probably, at Career Visioning in May when we took it with you, was Denny said, nobody fails at real estate, they only quit.
That's right.
And it goes back to what you're saying is, you knew you just didn't have to quit, because
Right.
if you didn't quit, you would eventually
We were going to
succeed.
make it. Because he was also meeting with us often. There was only 13 of us at the time.
Okay.
And so he was meeting with us, and we were all doing it very differently. And what you'll see with those original 13 people is that now we're a whole lot more homogenous. We still might execute differently. In fact, we do. However, the model that we run is very, very similar. Where back then, we were all over the place.
So what's your drive then? You could have gone one of two paths, right? You could have just said, you know what, I'm going to nail this at a high level and just keep my head down and focus on it. But you took the path of, we're still going to succeed and rock it, but I'm going to educate others. Like when I look at Kristan Cole and the Kristan Cole Network, it is so selfless in the fact that, like, you're educating so many people that are not a part of your organization on a monthly basis.
true.
How does that, and even to, in December, we've got the GSO Summit, our GrowthWord Summit. Why put so much time and energy into educating people about expansion outside of your own organization?
Because I really did, I think I looked inside, it was back like in 2005, 2007, and I really want to understand what drove me.
Okay.
And that was back before I knew there even was such a thing as a big why or any of that. But I wanted to understand why I did what I did. And I spent a year journaling it, working on it, because I wanted to understand, why did I do some of the things that I did? I felt compelled.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why. And as I really searched that and got real clarity on it, the happiest I've ever been in my life is always when I'm thinking about others more than I'm thinking about myself. And that's just absolutely true. That's not, airy-fairy. It's just the truth. And I also discovered, interestingly enough, that by doing so, I never have to worry about winning or getting what I want.
Right.
And so early on in my, when I first started building a team, and they always wanted to talk about goals and units, and I said, you know what, you guys, if we are serving others and we're doing it in such a way that we really don't have an expectation of something in return. Now that's interesting. Mm-hmm. I promise you the numbers will always be there. So we focused on that and the numbers were always there, interestingly enough. So it just became my focus then.
So you were talking numbers here. So before you expanded, is there a certain amount of transactions that you did, or do you remember that?
Yeah,
Or,
absolutely.
And then now, what did you bring us up to date? Like right now, how many? You're in over 30 locations right now. Mm-hmm. So I mean, when you start to put it all together, this is huge.
Well,
Very
so until we started expanding, which was in 2012, so that'd be 6 years ago. So for the first 29 years of my career, we never broke above 55 million in volume. Okay. Never broke above 1.8 in GCI. This year, we'll close 1,000 units. We're in 30 locations. Our GCI will be more than 7 million. And our volume will be probably close to 300 million.
Wow.
And so in 6 years, if you think about that growth, I mean, the pool of potential buyers and sellers in Wasilla, Alaska is only so big. And I remember Gary telling me, and this is before I even came to Keller Williams. He said, you are going to have to go into another pool of opportunity. So in my mind, I thought commercial, luxury. I didn't think location specific. So when then I started meeting with him more often once I actually came to the company, then I got the fact that expanding into Anchorage, where there's 250,000 people, the average sales price is $100,000 more. The number of days on the market are fewer, and the number of transactions, there's about 3,500 homes sold in Anchorage, and in Wasilla there were 1,200. So and after so many years in the business, my leads were actually pulling me into Anchorage, but none of my agents wanted to drive to Anchorage.
Got it.
Gotcha.
So that's really and that's a great reason to expand. You've got leads that are naturally and organically pulling you into another location. The other reason you would want to choose to expand is because you've got people in your organization that want more. And we all know that if we're not willing to allow our worlds, I shouldn't say make, allow them to get as big as they need to get so that they can get what they want, they'll leave. So those are really the two fundamental reasons that you would ever want to expand, right there. Because for me personally, I didn't need to expand to achieve my own financial goals. I'd already achieved them, honestly.
One of the worst reasons to expand is ego.
That's a terrible reason.
Yeah.
That's a terrible reason. And honestly, there were some folks, even in Gary's Top 100, when expansion first came out, that went out and tried to expand and failed and retreated. Because it is different than building a 7th level team.
Yeah.
It's the same and yet it's a little different, especially when you're going into a new location where you're not a household name.
So one of the things that you said there was opportunity. We've talked about this a bunch, and my favorite story that I repeat on your behalf about opportunity is you and Anthony Azar in the airport. Can you talk, the cliff notes of that?
And who is Anthony Azar, too?
Well,
people, we know who he is.
Anthony is like this unicorn on the podcast. We talk about him all the time, but he hasn't been on yet. Anthony is one of my mentors, one of Aaron's, business partner for you.
Right.
So kind of go over that story of in the airport and just being overwhelmed. And
Sure. It's a great story because I learned something about myself. And so Anthony and I had known one another because when I was originally the regional director for the Southwest region, the Tucson market centers were still in my region.
Yeah.
So that's how we got to know one another and worked together. And actually at that time, two of his team leaders were, two guys that, reported to me and, well, indirectly.
Yeah.
And so Anthony and I knew one another. And so that story in the airport kind of went like this. The week before I had heard John Maxwell, I think I don't know it was in person, but I remember hearing the story where he was talking about he and Mark Cole had come home from an overseas trip. And Mark had a ton to do. He was busy, and John had asked him to come into some meetings the next day. And Mark's response was, "But John, I've got so many things to do. Do you really need me?" And John says it was a teaching moment. So he sat Mark down and explained to him that he didn't have enough white space in his calendar, that he was efficient, but not necessarily effective, or as effective as he could have been, because he was so stacked that there was no breathing room. Yeah. There was no thinking time. There was no time for opportunity. Wow. And that he really needed to schedule into his calendar thinking time and opportunity time. And I had just heard that, and I was in the airport in Jacksonville, Florida, and my flight had been delayed, which naturally in my mind, I immediately think, I can get some things done. And so I saw Anthony walking down the corridor, and I immediately, thought, put your head down and just keep working. And instantly I thought to myself the story that John had told the week before, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that this time. And so I looked up, saw Anthony. He sat down, and we talked for the 2.5 hours that my flight had been delayed. And in talking, because we were both on the same flight, coming back to Phoenix. And so in talking with him, at the end of that 2.5 hours, he said to me, there's two people that you need to know. And what's interesting is today I'm in business with those two people, and I'm in business with Anthony. Yep. And so I tell that story because I'm certainly not perfect at still leaving opportunity and thinking time in my calendar. It's still there every day, but I can tell you that I have, a lot more opportunity has come my way because I allow myself time to think, and I allow time to not be so saturated with activities that I can't stop and actually entertain a conversation that then leads to something else. So that was a big lesson for me because I'm naturally an activities-based person. I get energy from getting things done.
Yeah, checking the box.
Yes, and so and energy actually, I lose my energy by being around a lot of people. So interestingly enough, people think I'm a high I and I'm not. And because when I'm teaching, I'm very purposeful about being fully present there and giving to those people, kind of leaving it on the field, if you will. And when I'm done, I'm exhausted.
Well, one thing I appreciate about you is we've seen your schedule and you've pulled it up at classes or whatnot, is you're very purposeful with your time into the fact that you schedule thinking time.
Yes.
So on and so forth. The other thing is, one of the things I've heard you say is that you don't schedule important meetings in the late afternoon because by that time
I'm
emotionally drained.
drained.
I'm drained.
Yeah. That's, being purposeful is huge, I think.
Yeah. I remember we were up here. I was up here. This must have been, it was right after you came over to Keller Williams. And you were teaching a recruit select class.
Yes.
I just remember it was in a different market center. And I know Anthony Azar was there, and there was a lady by the name of Teresa Barnaby. And I was sitting in the back. I always have to because I'm so jittery. Yep. And I remember we left the class, and I remember we're driving back, and Anthony Azar was like, watch that woman. She's going somewhere real quick. And that was many, many years ago, and it's right before the piece with the expansion.
Right.
And getting into Gary's Top 100 and running the expansion program. So I've been watching, everybody's been watching. You've done a phenomenal job.
Well, thank you. Had a lot of people, that help, obviously. No one succeeds alone, and we know that. And that's why even in the new course that I'm teaching, we talk so much about why it's so important, the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Because no one succeeds alone. And if you want your trajectory of success to grow, you have to be purposeful about spending time around people who are thinking differently than you do. I'll give you an example. Yesterday I was in California teaching GSO, and one of the gals in the class had been in the class in March. And she said, I cannot believe how small I was thinking in March compared to taking the class right now.
That's awesome.
She said, just in that period of time, just my thinking process and has changed so much. There was another gentleman in the class that told me that he was invited to the class, and he wasn't going to come because he was actually thinking about leaving Keller Williams. And he said that being in that class is exactly what he needed. He said, the course is the next level, if you will, and how to actually, the instruction manual, how you actually grow as a leader, become the leader that you need to be, so that you can attract talent. And secondly, the tactical pieces of how you actually expand. ESO really teaches you the broad-based foundation and principles, but it doesn't tell you what to go out and do day one. And that's what he said, is I actually now feel like I have what I need to take the next step. So that made me feel really good. And it made me feel awesome that that it was compelling enough for him that he realized that Keller Williams is exactly where he needs to be.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And this is growth word.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about, correct?
The GSO class, yeah.
Excellent.
Growth word systems.
Looking at growth word and the event in December, can you describe a little bit about the event and who should come?
Yeah, interestingly enough, people think because I'm teaching the class that only expansion people should come. And the summit in December, it's our 3rd annual summit, and the class is going to cover, if you are a brand new agent, or you're an agent on a team, or you're on an expansion team, or you're in leadership, I can't fathom that you wouldn't want to come to this class, because it's going to cover much more than just real estate, and I'll get back to that in a second. But the theme of this summit is really the people that were invited to speak. There's great people that you could ask to speak at the summit on real estate. there's great people that you could ask to speak on financials or
Lead
on
generation.
leadership or on lead gen. The people that are speaking are all people that have gone through something significant in their life. And so I would call them very gritty people. So for instance, Ben Kenny is speaking at the summit. Ben, for those of you who know his life story, nothing was given to Ben. And also, so Ben's not only speaking at the summit, so it's December 11, 12, and 13. On the 13th, it's half day, and we're doing a business mastermind. And Ben and I are going to lead that mastermind. Awesome. But in addition, you're going to see John Maxwell on the big screen. I'm going to be interviewing him on what does it take to become a transformational leader, a leader that actually transforms lives.
Yeah.
We're also going to have Billy McLaughlin there. So people who've taken Bold, they know that he was the #1 solo guitarist in the world, acoustical guitarist. Mm-hmm. And he got a strange disease in his right hand and couldn't play anymore. And Billy spent 5 years teaching himself how to play left-handed. So he's not only going to be there and I'm going to interview him, it gave me goosebumps.
That's what I said.
Crazy.
But he's also going to play at our reception that night.
Wow.
And so it's we have 2 guys flying in from New York that are going to talk about money. And I don't know who doesn't need some help with talking about money and how to become wealthy and instead of giving the government more of your money, how you can be very generous and with your money and how you can grow your money. And they are, I found them because of John Maxwell. And so it's, of course we're going to have real estate topics that Ben will discuss and I'm going to discuss, and we'll have some panels on lead generation as well. But I wanted everybody to know that this is not just another summit.
No.
It's going to be very special. The people that are coming are incredibly successful in their own right, but I also want people to know that these are people who've had to overcome a lot. Yeah. John Maxwell, when he chose to go from being a pastor to really being a pastor of leaders and go into leadership.
And a pastor of pastors.
Yeah, he he had to learn some very hard lessons and went through a lot making that transition, because sometimes when you transition into a bigger life or bigger business or expand upon it, not everybody wants you to go. And it's one thing for them to not want you to go, but sometimes there's people that don't want you to go either. And he experienced that. And I asked him, what did you do when you had that happen? And he said, I had to get some new friends.
Wow.
So, I think, and that's why I bring this back over and over again. Super majority of people didn't achieve their goals last year, not because of all the reasons that they usually name. It's because of the 5 people that they're hanging around the most. So if you want to grow, you've got to get out of your box. You've got to leave opportunity and thinking time. And you've got to be purposeful about going to events like this where people who think differently can speak into your life.
Not only that is the connections that you just make alone at a conference like this. How can people register for it? Because it will sell out again.
It will, and because we have limited seating. We only have 260 seats. We only have 50 VIP seats. And VIP seats means you're going to get to do a meet and greet with the speakers and take pictures, and you have tables at the front, and you come in a different entrance, and so lots of little perks like that. John Maxwell is going to sign his 10, his 10 favorite books for us to auction off. So it's going to be fun. So you go. All you have to do to really see any event, including that one, is go to growthword.com and just click on events.
We'll put the link in below.
Yeah. What I appreciate about this event is, this will be our 3rd year in a row, I love the fact that it's not like, hey, let's go rent out the biggest place we can find and just pack in as much as possible. Especially last year in the new location, there wasn't a bad seat in the house, and it was intimate the entire time. And the other thing is, this is not like if someone's watching this and we just had Dr. Holes on. He runs a chiropractic and wellness office. This applies to him. It's not just real estate. There's real estate principles, but if you have any type of operational business, you cannot afford not to come.
Well, we're also going to have a panel on giving back and charity, and we have like the mayor of Wasilla, Alaska, coming down.
That's so cool.
We have the people leading some of these organizations because they too have a story, and so they also are going to have a panel. And I also want to mention, because he would never ever ask me to do this, but it's worth mentioning because I really do think that those people who are others focused, there's a reason that they're successful. And when I told, Ben has always come and spoken at this event. Well, this year he stepped up even to a much bigger place in my heart and mind, because this is, my event division is one person, Tegan, and Ben has 5, and Ben has lent his entire events team to her to help her get ready for this event, and then he's bringing them with him to help her with the event on site. And he didn't have to do that, but I want people to know that he's the real deal. Ben is a very generous person, and that's I just think that's huge when people are willing to do that. I think sometimes so people are so concerned. People ask me all the time, aren't you concerned about competing against these other expansion agents and expansion locations and competing for talent and all that? While all that may be true, even with you guys, you guys are in several locations. I never ever think about it as competition.
Zero. That's a scarcity mindset.
Very much. And so, I think that was really spoke to Ben's generosity and his authenticity about who he is as a person.
Well, just stuff like he does is when he does his conferences up there, is people can come tour his headquarters.
Sure. Yeah.
And speaking of generosity, because it's our podcast, we can do whatever we want. Your brother is in Hawaii or going to Hawaii?
He just got to Hawaii last week. Yeah.
And he is working with YWAM, Youth with a Mission. Right. Mm-hmm. Is he still fundraising?
Yes, he is.
Is there a way that people can donate? Like if they're
100%, they can donate to Kristan'sHomeOfHope.org, and we are writing a check to YWAM for him. And
What's his name?
His name is Craig Mosley. Craig and Sheila Mosley.
Craig's got and his wife have a place in my heart because Jenny and I did it when we started church. Like we left everything.
They left everything.
Yeah, totally faith. And
my brother is a commercial general contractor. Uh-huh. My brother runs all the huge jobs in Anchorage. Remodel the federal building, remodel the library, remodel one of the biggest schools in Anchorage. And, here he is, and he has a great job with this company, Capstone. He has great retirement, security. Great everything, security, and left it all.
Because he wanted to make a difference. Yes,
and because the gentleman that started YWAM has a vision for, folks that are missionaries in other countries to actually have a trade to go to that country with, so that on their visa it says I'm a carpenter, I'm a plumber, I'm an electrician, and because A, they get into the country much easier. B, they actually can actually
make a physical difference.
Yeah, and they can make a difference in America when they come home.
Yep.
And so the gentleman that started YWAM asked my brother. First of all, they brought him and my sister-in-law Sheila over there, and at the end of the trip, asked them if they would come in, and she would leave the administrative division. Like, she also had a great job, and she just passed all these tests in the medical field, around admin. And they asked my brother to lead this school, to train all these people.
That's so cool.
And then to go do it in other countries.
I love it.
So,
it's just,
I love my brother. My brother has never ever fundraised at all. He's always the person giving. And so.
And probably feels dirty asking for money.
Yeah. So he goes, I don't even know how to do this. And I said, oh, brother, we got, this is, and so when I told John Maxwell about this, John wrote me a $20,000 check to challenge someone else to also donate that money. So we're going to be talking about that at the summit as well. And I told John that that I was going to give that money to my brother, or to YWAM.
Yeah.
And so my brother, he just is in disbelief. He just not in disbelief. that's probably not the right word, just is so humbled
Yeah.
that he would do that I'd be willing to fundraise for him. So my brother and Sheila are going to be in Phoenix too.
Are they really?
I'm going to
Pretty
interview
cool.
them.
That's
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
A little bit of insight.
That's exciting. I'm
Yeah.
excited to meet him.
So my I think my brother, I filmed him in Alaska and did some clips for him, and so that he could use those for fundraising.
Yeah.
When people are trying to fundraise for him and they can show a clip. And
Absolutely.
my brother, I've never seen him so nervous.
We got to get him to Mexico with us.
There you go.
So we go down twice a year to
weeks, yeah.
Mexico. We leave in 2 weeks again
That's awesome.
to go build homes for families living in poverty down in Mexico.
Right there, one mission.
Yep.
So I don't know if I told you guys, because I know you guys do that in
Yep.
building homes. August 31st, we closed on our first fourplex, which was our vision 5 years ago, to support safe housing for at-risk youth, meaning kids that graduate the Teen Challenge program.
Yep.
They've changed their life, but we all know sometimes when they change their life, they still have to live with the baggage that got them there.
Right.
And some of them have felonies, and they can't get housing. And so we bought this fourplex so that kids that graduate the program can apply for housing and can get reduced, rent
That's
and get
awesome.
housing while they build a track record showing that they're different.
Yeah.
So plugging them back
made a
into the
change.
community in a
Yep.
positive aspect.
Yes,
That's
and
awesome.
also
Wow.
they can apply for a job at our call center.
That's so cool.
That's
So we
pretty
closed
neat.
August 31st, and 2 of them moved in.
That's awesome.
August 31st.
See, to me, like we talked about, we were actually just talking about that. Is talking about mission statements and everything else. Like my big thing is to be about leaving a legacy and being an agent of change, because like we all have kids and just going like I don't, not arrogantly, I don't really care too much about what everybody thinks. Like I want to leave a legacy for my kids when I'm dead and gone, that my kids go, man, I was so proud of my dad, and be able to show that. Like my biggest win in life, I think, is that my kids can take their kids down to Mexico and drive down the street and go, hey, your grandpa and some of his buddies built all these houses. Like that's,
He was part of all of it.
Yeah.
that's, but when you're aligned with other people like that, like that's Aaron's heart, that's your heart, like you don't talk about competition anymore. You don't talk about anything like
No,
that.
we
That
don't
stuff
at all.
comes as a
Yeah.
byproduct of
It does.
doing good.
What do you want as a legacy?
Yeah, this is
This is like the neat.
Yeah,
Because you've accomplished a ton of really cool stuff.
in
But-
2003, I was interviewed, and I hadn't seen that CD in a long time, and I was interviewed by a gentleman who's no longer with us named Howard Britton, and he asked me that very question, and I said it then, and it seems so simple, but it truly is the truth. I want to hear, well done,
Yep.
my good and faithful servant.
yep.
Because I want to have used the gifts and the money and the success that God has given me to make a difference.
Be a good steward.
Yeah, for sure. And so, and I talk to my brother sometimes, because my brother is, when I went to church in Alaska, he was an elder in the church up there, and I talked to my brother. True story. My brother, I think he was maybe in his mid-20s, and I sat down with my brother and I said, I have one question for you. Am I going to see you in heaven? And my brother said that, when I said that to him, everything changed, because, we were not raised in a Christian home, and my brother never really had thought about it like that. And so everything changed for my brother that day. And so I sat him down when I was in Alaska, and because sometimes, maybe my husband and I went on a trip to Europe this summer. And I said to my brother, I feel a little guilty spending money like that to go on, to go on this trip. And my brother, he just shut me down right there. He said, no. That being successful doesn't, and being a good steward doesn't mean that you can't enjoy anything
Correct.
in life. But sometimes it feels strange to spend that kind of money on you. So.
But I look at it about how that exponentially impacts us. That may drive somebody else to want to live a bigger life like that. And like, could you imagine 30 years ago, being able to generously give the amount of money that you've given in the last 12 months. You know,
Yeah.
it's just insane. You know, it's a big one.
Well, you know what our goal is by the end of the year is to raise $350,000. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
But I absolutely believe that we're going to do it.
That's
so
awesome.
It's a lot of lives changed.
It is. So anything before we end that you want to say whatsoever?
You know, people are looking for the big opportunity. And what I would say is big opportunities seldom ever come. Small ones surround you every day. And when you pick up those small ones, it's interesting how that process, by being willing to see the small opportunity, at some point, bigger ones start to show up. But I think we have it turned around. We're always looking for the big opportunity. You've got, you know, they seldom ever come, but small ones surround us every day. So I'd say to people, look for the small opportunities to make a difference. It doesn't have to be some huge thing. It's like, start small. You know, like I said, 5 years ago we had the vision to buy the fourplex. Well, that just happened. So it took us 5 years to get there. So think big, but be willing to start small and then build on it. It is a sequential process, not simultaneous. And you know, go be around people. So I had the opportunity to spend Denny and I did 4 days with John Maxwell this summer in North Carolina playing golf.
Yep. And catching turtles.
And I when I got there, before I got there, I told my husband, I want you to help me with the questions because I want to use this as an opportunity to find out from John, how did you learn to raise money like you have? And he asked me, how much money have you raised so far? And I said, well, last year we raised about $45,000. He goes, well, what's your goal this year? And I said, 350. He goes, I think that's a great goal. And then for the next 48 days, all we did was talk about how to do that. And he gave me some phenomenal ideas, which we are using. And one of them was, you know, John himself being willing to be that person that donated a very big chunk of money to encourage other people to do the same. But, you know, he has a list of 6 questions. If you Google it, John Maxwell, six questions.
We've got them.
Yeah.
So be prepared that any person you meet, that you've got those questions on your phone, that if you're having lunch with somebody, if you're having coffee with somebody, you know, ask great questions. So start small, pick up small opportunities, be an asker of great questions, and then listen a lot.
And ask those questions not to just the big grandiose public figures.
No, ask them to everybody that you're
I think
around.
there's opportunity in everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time.
It's been
Thank
fun.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you do
Let's
and
go
continue
change
to
some.
do. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go change some lives upstairs
That's
this
what
afternoon.
I'm talking about. Let's do it.
All right.
All right.